Violet Navarro stood in the marble lobby of Zenith Global, gripping her worn leather portfolio so tightly her knuckles had gone white, knowing that in exactly 3 minutes she would walk into the CEO's office and tell him something no one else in this gleaming tower had the courage to say. His entire rebranding campaign was a disaster. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Violet stepped inside, her reflection staring back at her from the polished steel walls. She looked exactly like herself, which was to say she looked nothing like the polished executives gliding through the lobby in their tailored suits and pristine heels. Her dark curls refused to be tamed into the sleek buns and smooth blowouts she saw everywhere around her. Her dress was clean and professional, but came from a department store, not a designer boutique. She wore minimal makeup because she had never mastered the art of contouring, and her jewelry consisted of small silver hoops her grandmother had given her years ago. The elevator climbed toward the 42nd floor, and Violet felt her stomach drop with each ascending number. She had worked at Zenith Global for 3 years, tucked away in the creative department where she designed marketing materials and occasionally contributed ideas to larger campaigns. She was good at her job, great even, but she had never been the type to push herself into the spotlight. She did her work, collected her paycheck, and went home to her small apartment in Brooklyn where she could be herself without worrying about impressing anyone. But 2 weeks ago, everything changed. The company had unveiled its new direction, a complete rebrand that was supposed to modernize Zenith Global's image and appeal to younger consumers. Violet had sat in the presentation, watching slide after slide of generic stock photos, trendy buzzwords, and designs that looked like every other corporate rebrand she had seen in the past 5 years. It was safe, sterile, and completely devoid of the authenticity that had made Zenith Global successful in the first place. The elevator dinged, and the doors opened onto the executive floor. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Manhattan. Violet walked down the hallway, her modest heels clicking against the marble, until she reached the reception area outside the CEO's office. "Violet Navarro," she said to the receptionist, a woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a smile that looked painted on. "I have an appointment with Mr. Zimmerman." The receptionist checked her computer, her smile never wavering. "Of course. He's ready for you. Go right in." Violet took a deep breath and pushed open the heavy wooden door. The office beyond was enormous, with sleek modern furniture, abstract art on the walls, and those same floor-to-ceiling windows that made her feel like she was standing on top of the world. And behind a massive glass desk sat Trenton Zimmerman, the CEO of Zenith Global. Violet had seen him before, of course. Everyone in the company had seen him, though usually from a distance. He was the kind of man who commanded attention without trying, the kind of man who made boardrooms go silent when he walked in. He was in his early 30s, which was young for a CEO of a company this size, but he had earned his position through a combination of sharp business instincts and an ability to see opportunities where others saw only obstacles. He looked up as she entered, and Violet felt her breath catch. Trenton Zimmerman was handsome in a way that seemed almost unfair. Strong jaw, dark hair that was perfectly styled without looking overdone, and eyes that were a striking shade of gray. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and even sitting down, she could tell he was tall and broad-shouldered. "Miss Navarro," he said, standing and extending his hand across the desk. His voice was deep and smooth, the kind of voice that could sell anything or convince anyone. "Please, have a seat." Violet shook his hand, feeling the warmth and strength in his grip, and then sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. She placed her portfolio on her lap and tried to ignore the way her heart was hammering against her ribs. "I was intrigued by your email," Trenton said, sitting back down and leaning forward slightly, his full attention focused on her. "You said you had concerns about the rebrand." Violet nodded, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "I do. With all due respect, Mr. Zimmerman, I think the new direction is a mistake." She watched his expression carefully, waiting for anger or dismissal, but instead he simply raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "The rebrand feels generic," Violet said, opening her portfolio and pulling out several printed examples. "It looks like every other corporate rebrand we have seen in the past decade. Clean lines, minimalist design, trendy language. But Zenith Global was never about following trends. The company was built on innovation, on taking risks, on being authentic. This rebrand strips all of that away." She slid the papers across the desk, and Trenton picked them up, studying them closely. Violet continued, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. "I have been working here for 3 years, and I have watched this company connect with people because it feels real. The old branding was bold and a little rough around the edges, but that was the point. It reflected the company's values. This new campaign is so polished and perfect that it does not feel like anything anymore. It is just noise." Trenton set the papers down and looked at her, his gray eyes unreadable. "You think we are making a mistake?" "I do," Violet said firmly. "And I think if you launch this rebrand, you are going to alienate the customers who have been loyal to Zenith Global from the beginning." There was a long silence. Violet felt her pulse racing, wondering if she had just committed career suicide. But then Trenton leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You are right," he said simply. Violet blinked. "I am. I have had the same concerns," Trenton admitted, running a hand through his hair. "The rebrand was pushed by our marketing team and several board members who thought we needed to modernize. I approved it because the data supported their arguments, but something about it has felt wrong from the start. I just could not put my finger on what." He picked up the papers again, studying them more carefully. "You have clearly thought about this. Do you have any suggestions for an alternative direction?" Violet hesitated. She had not expected this. She had expected to be dismissed or, at best, politely heard and then ignored. But Trenton Zimmerman was actually listening to her. "I do," she said, pulling out another set of designs from her portfolio. "I have been working on some concepts in my free time. They are rough, but I think they capture what Zenith Global should be: bold, authentic, innovative. Not trying to be something we are not." She handed the designs to Trenton, and he spread them out on his desk, studying each one carefully. Violet watched him, trying to read his expression. His face was focused, his eyes moving over every detail. After what felt like an eternity, he looked up at her. "These are incredible," he said, and there was genuine admiration in his voice. "This is exactly what we need. How long have you been working on these?" "A couple of weeks," Violet admitted. "Late nights, mostly." "I just could not stop thinking about it." Trenton stood, gathering the designs and pinning them to a board on the wall. He stepped back, looking at them from a distance, and then turned to face her. "I want you to lead the rebrand," he said. Violet felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. "What?" "You clearly understand this company better than anyone else I have talked to," Trenton said. "You have the vision we need. I want you to put together a team and develop this into a full campaign. You will have whatever resources you need, and you will report directly to me." Violet opened her mouth, then closed it again. This was beyond anything she had imagined. "Mr. Zimmerman, I am just a junior designer. I have never led a project like this." "But you should," Trenton said, his eyes meeting hers. You have the talent and the passion. That is what matters. Violet felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of excitement and terror. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, but it was also a massive responsibility. She thought about backing down, about saying she was not ready, but then she remembered why she had come here in the first place. She believed in this company and she believed in her vision for it. "Okay," she said, her voice steady. "I will do it." Trenton smiled, and it transformed his entire face. He went from intimidating CEO to someone warm and approachable, and Violet felt her heart skip a beat. "Excellent," he said. "We will set up a meeting with the executive team for next week. In the meantime, I want you to start developing your ideas further. If you need anything at all, you come directly to me." Violet stood, gathering her portfolio, and shook his hand again. "Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. I will not let you down." "I know you will not," he said. "And please, call me Trenton." Violet left his office in a daze, barely aware of her surroundings as she made her way back to the elevator. It was only when the doors closed and she was alone that she let herself react, a wide grin spreading across her face. She had done it. She had spoken up, and she had been heard. And now she had the chance to make a real difference. Over the next week, Violet threw herself into the project. She worked late into the night, developing designs, crafting messaging, and creating a comprehensive vision for what Zenith Global could be. She assembled a small team of designers and copywriters she trusted, people who understood the company's values and shared her passion for authenticity. But as the days passed, Violet found herself thinking about Trenton Zimmerman more than she should. She told herself it was just because he was her boss now, because she was working closely with him on this project. But she could not deny the way her heart raced whenever she saw his name in her email inbox, or the way she found herself checking her reflection before meetings with him. The presentation to the executive team arrived faster than Violet expected. She stood in the conference room, her designs displayed on a massive screen behind her, facing a table full of executives who looked skeptical at best. Trenton sat at the head of the table, his expression neutral, giving nothing away. Violet took a deep breath and began. She walked them through her vision, explaining how the new campaign would honor Zenith Global's roots while pushing the company forward. She showed them the designs, the messaging, the rollout strategy. She spoke with passion and conviction, refusing to let their skeptical looks shake her confidence. When she finished, there was silence. Violet felt her stomach twist with anxiety. Then one of the executives, a stern-looking woman named Margaret who headed the marketing department, spoke up. "This is completely different from what we developed," Margaret said, her tone icy. "We spent months on our campaign, and you are suggesting we throw it all away." "I am not suggesting we throw anything away," Violet said calmly. "I am suggesting we build on what makes Zenith Global special instead of trying to make it look like every other company out there." "But the data supports a more modern approach," another executive chimed in. "Younger consumers respond to clean, minimalist branding. They respond to authenticity even more," Violet countered. "And there is nothing authentic about trying to be something you are not." The debate went back and forth, with some executives supporting Violet's vision and others defending the original campaign. Violet held her ground, answering every question and addressing every concern. She felt Trenton's eyes on her the entire time, but when she glanced at him, his expression remained unreadable. Finally, Trenton stood, and the room fell silent. He walked to the screen, studying Violet's designs, and then turned to face the table. "I am approving this campaign," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Miss Navarro has shown us what Zenith Global should be, and I believe this is the direction we need to take. The original rebrand is scrapped. We move forward with this." Margaret looked like she wanted to argue, but one look at Trenton's face told her it would be pointless. The decision was made. "Thank you, everyone," Trenton said. "Miss Navarro, please stay. I would like to discuss next steps." The executives filed out, some congratulating Violet, others avoiding her eyes. When the room was empty except for the two of them, Trenton turned to her. "You were incredible," he said, and the warmth in his voice made Violet's cheeks flush. "Thank you," she said. "I was terrified." "You did not show it," Trenton said, walking closer to her. "You stood your ground and defended your vision. That takes courage." Violet looked up at him, suddenly very aware of how close he was standing. She could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive, and see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. "I just said what I believed," she said softly. "That is what makes you different," Trenton said. "Most people in this building say what they think others want to hear. You say what you believe, even when it is difficult. I admire that." Violet felt her heart hammering. There was something in the way he was looking at her, something that made her feel seen in a way she had never experienced before. But before she could respond, his phone buzzed, breaking the moment. Trenton glanced at it and sighed. "I have another meeting, but I want to schedule regular check-ins with you as we move forward with the campaign. Are you free tomorrow evening?" "Tomorrow evening," Violet repeated, trying not to read too much into it. "We can work over dinner," Trenton said. "There is a lot to cover, and I find these discussions are more productive outside the office." "Okay," Violet said, ignoring the voice in her head that was screaming that this was more than just a work dinner. "That sounds good." "Perfect," Trenton said, smiling. "I will have my assistant send you the details." He left, and Violet stood alone in the conference room, her mind racing. She told herself it was just a work dinner, nothing more. But she could not shake the feeling that something had shifted between them, something that went beyond professional respect. The next evening, Violet stood in front of her closet, trying to decide what to wear. Everything she owned suddenly seemed wrong. Too casual, too formal, too boring, too much. She finally settled on a deep blue dress that was professional but still showed her personality, paired with the silver hoops her grandmother had given her. She met Trenton at a restaurant in Midtown, the kind of place with white tablecloths and a sommelier. Violet felt out of her depth the moment she walked in, but Trenton greeted her warmly, standing when she approached the table and pulling out her chair. "You look lovely," he said, and Violet felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you," she said, sitting down. "This place is incredible." "It is one of my favorites," Trenton said, "but I come here for the food, not the atmosphere. I hope you are hungry." They ordered, and as they waited for their meals, they talked about the campaign. But as the evening went on, the conversation shifted. Trenton asked about her background, and Violet found herself telling him about growing up in a small town upstate, about her family, about how she had always loved art and design but never thought she could make a career out of it. "Why not?" Trenton asked, genuinely curious. "I do not know," Violet said, playing with her napkin. "I guess I always felt like people like me did not get to do things like that. Design, art, that was for people who went to fancy schools and had connections. I went to community college and worked my way through on scholarships. I did not have anyone telling me I could be something more." "But you did become something more," Trenton said. "You are leading one of the most important projects in this company's history." Violet laughed softly. "I still cannot believe that is real. Sometimes I feel like I am going to wake up and find out it was all a dream." "It is real," Trenton said, his eyes intense. "You earned this, Violet. You are talented and passionate and brave. Do not ever doubt that." Violet felt tears prick at her eyes, and she blinked them away quickly. She was not used to this kind of praise, this kind of belief in her abilities. It was overwhelming. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That means a lot." They talked late into the evening, long after their plates had been cleared. Trenton told her about his own journey, about how he had taken over Zenith Global after his father's sudden retirement, about the pressure he felt to prove himself, about the loneliness that came with being at the top. "Everyone thinks being CEO is glamorous," he said, swirling the wine in his glass. "But most of the time it is isolating. You make decisions that affect thousands of people and you do it alone. You cannot show weakness. You cannot show doubt. You just have to keep moving forward and hope you are making the right choices." "That sounds exhausting," Violet said. "It is," Trenton admitted. "But when something like this happens, when someone like you walks into my office and reminds me why I do this, it makes it worthwhile." Their eyes met across the table, and Violet felt that same electric connection she had felt in the conference room. But this time, she did not look away. Neither did Trenton. "I should get you home," Trenton said finally, his voice slightly rough. "It is getting late." He insisted on having his driver take her back to Brooklyn. And as Violet sat in the back of the sleek black car, she could not stop replaying the evening in her mind. The way Trenton had looked at her, the way he had listened to her, the way he had opened up to her. It felt like more than just a professional relationship, but she was afraid to let herself believe it. Over the next several weeks, Violet and Trenton fell into a pattern. They had regular meetings to discuss the campaign, but they always seemed to run long, turning into dinners or late-night conversations in his office. Violet found herself looking forward to these meetings more than anything else in her day. Trenton made her laugh, challenged her ideas, and listened to her in a way no one ever had before. But Violet was also becoming increasingly aware of the differences between them. Trenton lived in a penthouse overlooking Central Park. She lived in a tiny one-bedroom in Brooklyn. He wore custom suits and drove a luxury car. She took the subway and bought her clothes on sale. He moved in circles of wealth and power that she could barely imagine. One evening, as they were working late in his office, Trenton's assistant brought in coffee. She was a polished woman in her 50s who always seemed to know what Trenton needed before he asked for it. "Thank you, Patricia," Trenton said, and the assistant smiled warmly at him before leaving. "She has been with me for 10 years, Trenton said, noticing Violet watching. "I do not know what I would do without her. It must be nice to have that kind of support," Violet said. "It is," Trenton agreed. "But sometimes I wonder if people like Patricia see the real me or just the CEO." "What do you mean?" Violet asked. Trenton was quiet for a moment, staring out the window at the glittering Manhattan skyline. "I think people have an idea of who I am supposed to be. Confident, decisive, always in control. And I am those things, but I am also just a person who makes mistakes and has doubts. But I can never show that side of myself, not here." "You show it to me," Violet said softly. Trenton turned to look at her, and something in his expression made Violet's breath catch. "You are different, Violet. You do not see me as the CEO, you see me as Trenton. Is that a bad thing?" Violet asked. "No," Trenton said, moving closer to her. "It is the best thing that has happened to me in a long time." They were standing close now, close enough that Violet could feel the warmth radiating from him. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Trenton reached up, gently tucking a curl behind her ear. "Violet," he said, his voice low. "I need to tell you something." Before he could continue, his phone rang, shattering the moment. Trenton closed his eyes briefly, clearly frustrated, and then answered it. "Zimmerman," he said curtly. He listened for a moment, his expression darkening. "I will be right there." He hung up and looked at Violet apologetically. "I am so sorry. There is an issue with one of our manufacturing plants. I have to go deal with it." "Of course," Violet said, trying to hide her disappointment. "Go. I will finish up here." Trenton hesitated, looking like he wanted to say something more, but then he just nodded and left. Violet stood alone in his office, her emotions swirling. Something was happening between them, something real, but she did not know what to do about it. As the campaign moved forward, Violet found herself under increasing scrutiny. Some people in the company were supportive, excited about the bold new direction. But others, particularly Margaret and her allies, were openly critical. They questioned Violet's experience, her decisions, her right to be leading such an important project. One afternoon, Violet was in a meeting with the creative team when Margaret walked in unannounced. "I need to speak with you," Margaret said, her tone making it clear this was not a request. Violet excused herself and followed Margaret to an empty conference room. The moment the door closed, Margaret turned on her. "I do not know what game you are playing," Margaret said, her voice cold, "but you are out of your depth. You are a junior designer who got lucky, and you are going to ruin this company with your naive ideas." "I am not playing any game," Violet said, keeping her voice calm even though her hands were shaking. "I am doing my job." "Your job is to follow the direction of people who actually know what they are doing," Margaret snapped. "Not to cozy up to the CEO and manipulate him into throwing away months of work." "I did not manipulate anyone," Violet said, her anger rising. "Trenton approved my campaign because he believed in it, not because of anything else." "Oh, please," Margaret said with a harsh laugh. "Everyone can see what is going on between you two. You are using him, and when this campaign fails, you will both pay the price." Violet felt like she had been slapped. "There is nothing going on between us, and even if there were, that has nothing to do with the quality of my work." "Keep telling yourself that," Margaret said, and then she walked out, leaving Violet standing alone, her heart pounding with anger and humiliation. That evening, Violet was still upset when she met Trenton for one of their regular dinners. He took one look at her face and immediately asked what was wrong. "Nothing," Violet said automatically, but Trenton was not buying it. "Violet, talk to me," he said gently. "What happened?" Violet hesitated, and then the whole story came pouring out. Margaret's accusations, the implication that Violet was using her relationship with Trenton to advance her career, the suggestion that she was not qualified for this position. "She is wrong," Trenton said, his voice hard with anger. "You earned this position. No one manipulated me into anything." "But she is not completely wrong," Violet said quietly. "I am out of my depth. I am a junior designer, Trenton. Maybe I do not belong here." "Stop," Trenton said firmly. He reached across the table and took her hand, and the touch sent electricity through Violet's entire body. "You belong here more than anyone. You have vision and talent and courage. Do not let anyone make you doubt that." "But what if she is right about the other thing?" Violet asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if people think I am only here because of something between us?" Trenton was quiet for a long moment. "Is there something between us?" he asked softly. Violet looked up at him, her heart pounding. This was it, the moment of truth. She could deny it, pretend she did not feel what she felt and keep things professional, or she could be honest. "I do not know," she said finally. "Sometimes I think there is, and then I remember who you are and who I am, and it seems impossible." "Why is it impossible?" Trenton asked. "Because you are Trenton Zimmerman," Violet said, pulling her hand back. "You are a CEO, a millionaire, someone who moves in a completely different world than I do. And I am just me. I am a girl from a small town who shops at department stores and takes the subway. We do not make sense." "Maybe we do not make sense on paper," Trenton said. "But when I am with you, I feel more like myself than I have in years. You do not care about my money or my position. You care about me, about my ideas, about who I really am. Do you know how rare that is?" But that is exactly why this is complicated, Violet said, feeling tears prick at her eyes. If something happens between us, people will think I am using you. They will think I got this position because of our relationship, not because of my work. And I cannot have that, Trenton. I cannot have people doubting that I earned this. So what are you saying? Trenton asked, and she could hear the pain in his voice. I am saying I will not change who I am for anyone, Violet said, the words coming out stronger than she felt. Not for this company, not for the people who judge me, and not for you. I need to prove myself on my own terms. I need to know that I earned this, that I deserve to be here, and if we start something now, I will never know for sure. Trenton looked at her for a long moment, and then he nodded slowly. I understand, he said quietly, and I respect that. Your integrity is one of the things I admire most about you. They finished dinner in near silence, the easy conversation from before replaced by a painful awareness of what had just happened. When Trenton's driver dropped Violet off at her apartment, she went inside and cried, wondering if she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. The next few weeks were agony. Violet threw herself into the campaign, working longer hours than ever before. She barely saw Trenton except in official meetings, and when they did interact, they were carefully professional. It was killing her, but she told herself it was necessary. She had to prove herself first. Everything else could wait. The campaign launch was scheduled for late November, a massive event that would unveil the new branding to the press, investors, and the public. As the date approached, Violet felt the pressure mounting. Everything had to be perfect. This was not just about her anymore. It was about proving that authenticity mattered, that being true to yourself was more valuable than trying to fit into someone else's mold. 3 days before the launch, disaster struck. One of the key vendors failed to deliver crucial materials, throwing the entire event into jeopardy. Violet was in the office at midnight, frantically trying to find alternatives when Trenton walked in. "What are you still doing here?" he asked, loosening his tie. "The Henderson Group failed to deliver," Violet said, her voice tight with stress. "We do not have the display materials for the launch. I have been calling every vendor I can find, but everyone is booked or cannot turn it around in time." Trenton walked over to her desk, studying the list of vendors she had been working through. "What about Meridian Creative?" "They said they were booked," Violet said. "Let me make a call," Trenton said, pulling out his phone. He stepped away, speaking quietly, and then came back 5 minutes later. "They will do it. They will have everything ready by tomorrow evening." Violet felt tears of relief spring to her eyes. "How did you do that?" "I have worked with them before," Trenton said. "They owed me a favor." "Thank you," Violet said, her voice breaking slightly. "I do not know what I would have done." "You would have figured it out," Trenton said gently. "You always do." They stood there for a moment, the air thick with everything unsaid between them. Then Trenton spoke again, his voice soft. "Violet, I need you to know something. I have respected your wishes these past few weeks. I have kept my distance because you asked me to. But after this launch, whether it succeeds or fails, I am going to tell you exactly how I feel, and then you can decide what you want to do about it." Violet's heart was pounding. "Trenton, You do not have to say anything now," Trenton said. "Just know that I am not going anywhere. And when you are ready, I will be here." The day of the launch arrived in a blur of activity. The venue was packed with press, investors, and employees. Violet stood backstage, her heart pounding, going over her speech one more time. Everything was riding on this. Trenton found her right before she was supposed to go on. "You are going to be amazing," he said. "I hope so," Violet said, her voice shaking slightly. "I know so," Trenton said. He hesitated, then added, "No matter what happens out there, I am proud of you. You took a risk. You stayed true to your vision and you did not let anyone make you compromise. That takes incredible strength. Violet felt her eyes fill with tears, but she blinked them back. "Thank you," she whispered. She walked onto the stage, the lights nearly blinding her, and looked out at the sea of faces. For a moment, panic seized her. Then she saw Trenton standing at the side of the stage, giving her an encouraging nod, and she remembered why she was doing this. "Good evening," she began, her voice stronger than she felt. "Thank you all for being here. Tonight, we are unveiling a new direction for Zenith Global, but it is not the direction you might expect." She clicked through her presentation, revealing the bold, authentic designs that she and her team had created. She talked about the importance of staying true to your values, about not following trends just because everyone else is doing it, about having the courage to be different. Zenith Global was founded on the principle of innovation, Violet said, her confidence growing with every word. But innovation is not about being trendy or following the crowd. It is about having the courage to be yourself, even when everyone tells you to be something else. That is what this campaign represents. It is about being bold enough to be real. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Violet felt her stomach drop, wondering if she had failed. Then the applause started, tentative at first, then growing stronger. People were standing, clapping, and Violet felt a wave of relief so strong it nearly knocked her over. The rest of the evening was a whirlwind. Reporters wanted interviews, investors wanted to talk strategy, employees wanted to congratulate her. Violet moved through it all in a daze, barely able to process what was happening. It was nearly midnight when the venue finally emptied. Violet stood in the middle of the empty space, surrounded by the displays she had worked so hard to create, feeling emotionally and physically exhausted. Violet. She turned to find Trenton walking toward her. He had taken off his suit jacket and loosened his tie, and he looked as tired as she felt. "You did it," he said, smiling. "The campaign is a hit. The press coverage has been overwhelmingly positive, and we have already had 3 major clients reach out about partnerships." "We did it," Violet corrected him. "I could not have done this without your support." "No," Trenton said, stopping in front of her. "This was all you. Your vision, your courage, your refusal to compromise. You proved everyone wrong, Violet. You proved that being yourself is more powerful than trying to be what others expect." Violet felt tears spring to her eyes again. "I was so scared," she admitted. "I kept thinking I was going to fail, that Margaret was right, that I was out of my depth." "But you did not fail," Trenton said softly. "You succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, and you did it without changing who you are." "I told you I would not change for anyone," Violet said, managing a small smile. "I know," Trenton said, his gray eyes intense. "And that is exactly why I fell in love with you." Violet's breath caught. "What?" "I fell in love with you," Trenton repeated, moving closer. "I fell in love with your authenticity, your passion, your courage. I fell in love with the way you stand up for what you believe in, even when it is hard. I fell in love with the way you make me feel like I can be myself instead of just the CEO everyone expects me to be. I fell in love with you exactly as you are, Violet, and I do not want you to change a single thing." Violet felt tears streaming down her cheeks. "You love me." "I do," Trenton said, reaching up to gently wipe away her tears. "I have loved you for weeks now, but I respected your need to prove yourself. You have done that now. You have shown everyone, including yourself, that you earned this position. So I am telling you now, no more hiding, no more pretending. I am in love with you and I want to be with you. If you will have me." Violet let out a shaky laugh. "If I will have you. Trenton, I have been in love with you since the first time you really listened to me, since you made me feel like my ideas mattered, like I mattered. I was just so scared that people would think I was using you, or that you only liked me because I was different from the people in your world." "You are different," Trenton said, cupping her face gently. "But that is not why I love you. I love you because you are brilliant and brave and kind. I love you because you challenge me and inspire me. I love you because when I am with you, I feel more alive than I have ever felt. You are not someone from a different world, Violet. You are my world." Violet felt like her heart was going to burst. "I love you too," she whispered. "I love you so much." Trenton leaned down and kissed her, and Violet felt like every nerve in her body was on fire. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer, pouring every ounce of emotion she had been holding back into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Trenton rested his forehead against hers. "Come home with me tonight," he said softly. "I want to wake up with you beside me. I want to start every day from now on seeing your face." "Okay," Violet said, smiling through her tears. "Yes." They left the venue hand in hand, and as Trenton's driver took them through the glittering streets of Manhattan, Violet could not stop smiling. She had been so afraid of losing herself, of changing to fit into Trenton's world. But she realized now that he had never wanted her to change. He loved her exactly as she was, and that made all the difference. The next few months were the happiest of Violet's life. She and Trenton kept their relationship private at first, wanting to navigate it without the scrutiny of the entire company. But as the campaign continued to succeed, and Violet proved herself again and again, they slowly let people know they were together. There were some raised eyebrows, of course, and Margaret made a few snide comments. But most people were supportive, and more importantly, no one could deny that Violet had earned her position. The campaign was a massive success, bringing in new clients and revitalizing Zenith Global's image. Violet was promoted to creative director, a position she had earned through hard work and talent, not through her relationship with Trenton. Trenton was incredible. He supported Violet's career while also being present in their relationship in a way she had never experienced before. He showed up for her, listened to her, and made her feel valued every single day. He introduced her to his world of charity galas and business dinners, but he also embraced her world, spending evenings in her tiny Brooklyn apartment, eating takeout and watching movies. One evening in late spring, they were walking through Central Park, the cherry blossoms in full bloom around them. They had been together for 6 months now, and Violet felt like she was floating. Trenton stopped by the lake, pulling her close. "I have something I want to ask you," he said, his voice nervous in a way she had never heard before. "What is it?" Violet asked, her heart beating faster. Trenton reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Violet's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a stunning diamond ring. "Violet Navarro," Trenton said, his gray eyes locked on hers. "You have changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. You have made me a better man, a better leader, a better person. You showed me what it means to be authentic, to be brave, to be true to yourself. And I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Violet felt tears streaming down her face, but this time they were tears of pure joy. "Yes," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Trenton slipped the ring onto her finger and then pulled her into a kiss that made the entire world disappear. When they broke apart, both laughing and crying, Violet looked down at the ring sparkling on her hand. "I cannot believe this is real," she said. "It is real," Trenton promised. "And it is forever." They were married 6 months later in a ceremony that perfectly blended their two worlds. It was held at a beautiful estate in upstate New York, close to where Violet had grown up. Her family was there, beaming with pride, along with friends from her old neighborhood. Trenton's business associates and high society friends mixed with Violet's art school classmates and her team from Zenith Global. It was elegant but warm, formal but personal, exactly like them. Violet wore a dress she had designed herself, something simple and beautiful that made her feel like the best version of herself. As she walked down the aisle, she saw Trenton waiting for her, his eyes filled with love and awe, and she knew she was making the right choice. "You look incredible," he whispered as she reached him. "So do you," she whispered back. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to support each other, challenge each other, and love each other exactly as they were. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife and Trenton kissed her, Violet felt like her heart was going to explode with happiness. The reception was a joyous celebration. They danced under twinkling lights, surrounded by everyone they loved. Violet's grandmother pulled her aside at one point, tears in her eyes. "You did good, my girl," she said, squeezing Violet's hand. "You stayed true to yourself and you found someone who loves you for it. That is all anyone can ask for." "I learned that from you," Violet said, hugging her tight. Later that night, as Violet and Trenton drove away from the reception, heading to the airport for their honeymoon in Italy, Violet looked at the man beside her and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" Trenton asked, glancing at her. "For loving me exactly as I am," Violet said. "For never asking me to change or be someone I am not. For seeing me when no one else did." Trenton brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I should be thanking you," he said. "You walked into my office that day and reminded me what really matters. You showed me that authenticity is more valuable than perfection, that courage is more important than playing it safe. You changed my life, Violet, and I will spend every day from now on making sure you know how much I love you." They spent 2 weeks in Italy, exploring ancient cities, eating incredible food, and falling even more in love. When they returned to New York, they moved into a new apartment together, a beautiful space in Manhattan that felt like home from the moment they walked in. Life settled into a new rhythm. Violet continued to thrive at Zenith Global, leading campaigns that pushed boundaries and challenged conventions. Trenton continued to run the company with vision and integrity, but now he had Violet by his side, supporting him and keeping him grounded. They became partners in every sense of the word, both in business and in life. A year after their wedding, Violet found out she was pregnant. She was terrified to tell Trenton, worried that he would expect her to slow down or step back from her career. But when she showed him the positive test, he lifted her into his arms and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We are having a baby," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "We are going to be parents. Are you happy?" Violet asked, searching his face. "I am beyond happy," Trenton said, cupping her face gently. "This is everything I never knew I wanted. A life with you, a family with you. You have given me the world, Violet." Their daughter was born on a snowy December evening, a tiny perfect bundle with Violet's dark curls and Trenton's gray eyes. They named her Rose after Violet's grandmother, and from the moment Trenton held her, Violet knew their family was complete. Parenthood was an adventure, unlike anything Violet had experienced. It was exhausting and messy and overwhelming, but it was also filled with more love than she had thought possible. Trenton was an incredible father, changing diapers and doing midnight feedings and singing lullabies in his deep voice that made Rose smile. They hired a nanny to help so Violet could continue working, but they both made sure to prioritize family time. Weekends were spent at home, just the three of them, enjoying the simple pleasures of being together. Violet watched Trenton play with Rose, making her giggle with silly faces and gentle tickles, and felt her heart swell with love. 2 years later, their son was born, a sturdy little boy they named James after Trenton's father. With 2 children now, life was even more chaotic, but Violet would not have changed a thing. Their apartment was filled with laughter and toys and the beautiful mess of family life. Violet continued to excel in her career, eventually becoming Chief Creative Officer of Zenith Global. She led the company through numerous successful campaigns, each one staying true to the principles of authenticity and courage that had defined her first project. She mentored young designers, especially women, encouraging them to trust their instincts and not be afraid to take risks. Trenton remained CEO, guiding Zenith Global to even greater success. But he credited much of that success to Violet, to the way she had transformed the company's culture and reminded everyone what really mattered. They were a team, both at work and at home, and their partnership was the foundation of everything they built. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they returned to Central Park, to the spot where Trenton had proposed. Their children were with Violet's parents for the weekend, giving them a rare evening alone. They walked hand in hand by the lake, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "Do you remember what you said to me that night at dinner?" Trenton asked, pulling Violet close. "When you told me you would not change for anyone." "I remember," Violet said, smiling at the memory. "I fell in love with you in that moment," Trenton confessed. "I had been attracted to you before, impressed by you, fascinated by you. But in that moment, when you stood up for yourself and refused to compromise who you were, that is when I knew. I knew you were the one I had been waiting for my entire life." "I was so scared," Violet admitted. "I thought if I said that, you would think I was difficult or stubborn." "I thought you were perfect," Trenton said, tilting her chin up so he could look into her eyes. "You were brave enough to be yourself in a world that constantly tells women to be smaller, quieter, more accommodating. You refused to change for anyone, and in doing so, you changed everything. You changed me, you changed Zenith Global, you changed our entire future, and I have loved you more every single day since then." Violet felt tears in her eyes, the happy kind that came from being completely overwhelmed with love. "I love you too," she said. "Thank you for loving me exactly as I am." "Always," Trenton promised, and then he kissed her as the sun set over the city they called home. Years continued to pass in a beautiful blur. Rose and James grew into bright, curious children who inherited their mother's creativity and their father's determination. Violet and Trenton watched them grow with pride and wonder, making sure to instill in them the values that had brought their parents together: authenticity, courage, and the importance of staying true to yourself. Violet never forgot where she came from. She established a scholarship fund for young artists from underprivileged backgrounds, helping them access opportunities she had struggled to find. She spoke at conferences and universities, telling her story and encouraging others to be bold and authentic in their own lives. Trenton was her biggest supporter in all of it, showing up to every speech, celebrating every success, and being there through every challenge. He had meant what he said that day in his office. Violet had reminded him why he did what he did, and he never took that for granted. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they renewed their vows in a small ceremony surrounded by their children, family, and closest friends. As they stood facing each other, holding hands, Violet thought back to that day she had walked into Trenton's office, terrified and determined, ready to speak her truth even if it cost her everything. "I would not change a single thing," she whispered to Trenton as they exchanged rings again. "Neither would I," he whispered back. "You are everything I ever wanted and more than I ever deserved." "We deserve each other," Violet said firmly. "We built this together," and they had. They had built a life based on love and respect and the courage to be themselves. They had built a family filled with laughter and warmth. They had built a partnership that made them both better than they could have been alone. As Violet looked around at the faces of everyone they loved, at her children dancing with their cousins, at Trenton smiling at her with love in his eyes, she felt a deep sense of peace. She had stayed true to herself, and in doing so, she had found everything she had never known she was looking for. That evening, after the guests had left, and the children were asleep, Violet and Trenton stood on the balcony of their apartment, looking out at the glittering lights of Manhattan. Trenton wrapped his arms around her from behind, and Violet leaned back against his chest, feeling safe and loved and home. "What are you thinking about?" Trenton asked, his voice rumbling in her ear. "About how lucky I am," Violet said. "About how this all started because I had the courage to walk into your office and tell you the truth." "I am the lucky one," Trenton said, tightening his arms around her. "You walked into my office and changed my life. You showed me what real strength looks like, what real courage looks like. You taught me that the most powerful thing anyone can do is be themselves." "We taught each other," Violet said, turning in his arms to face him. "You showed me that I was worthy of being seen, of being heard, of being loved exactly as I am. You never asked me to be anything other than myself, and that was the greatest gift anyone has ever given me." "You were always worthy," Trenton said, brushing a curl away from her face. "I just helped you see it." They stood there in the quiet of the night, holding each other, two people who had found something rare and precious. A love built on authenticity, on mutual respect, on the courage to be vulnerable and real. A love that had transformed both of their lives and created something beautiful together. "I love you," Violet said, the words as true now as they had been the first time she had said them. "I love you too," Trenton said. "Forever." And as they stood there under the stars, with their children sleeping peacefully inside and years of happiness ahead of them, Violet knew that she had found exactly what she had been looking for, without even knowing she was searching. She had found someone who loved her not despite who she was, but because of who she was. Someone who valued her authenticity and celebrated her courage. Someone who made her feel seen and heard and cherished every single day. She had declared that she would not change for anyone, standing firm in who she was even when it was scary and uncertain. And in doing so, she had found the one person who loved her exactly as she was, who had been falling for her from the very beginning, who saw her strength and authenticity as the most beautiful things about her. Their love story was not about changing to fit into someone else's world. It was about two people finding each other and building a world together, one where both of them could be their truest selves. It was about courage and authenticity, and the transformative power of being loved for exactly who you are, and it was perfect.